good morning to you all. What COVID-19 has done is that it has accelerated, the importance, the role of technology in tourism. So it's not a new phenomenon. But COVID-19 has also meant that SMEs that don't adopt digitalization are going to be left behind. So that is the background as to why we gave this topic. We chose the topic that we chose for this. So just by way of presenting, so the Vodafone Business study says, while all SMEs have been impacted by and face risks due to COVID-19, it is clear that the more digitalized SMEs have identified new business opportunities in the pandemic economy at a higher rate than the less digitalized businesses, right? So makes it very clear that digitalization is a major differentiator. But here is the irony. Even though I have indicated that technology has played such an important role in travel and tourism, a recent OECD study shows that a segment of travel and tourism is one of those that has been the least adopters of technology over a period of time when they've been monitoring this since 2009. And that segment is what they call accommodation and food, which is part of our sector. The Vodafone study also indicates that accommodation and business events, or what they call events, also are on the bottom end when it comes to technology adoption. So that's the background to our conversation, and I am pleased that I'll be able to interact with you on this very important topic. So let me introduce you to our audience, and I'm going to just take you in any order. Well, let's start with you, Ati, because they say ladies first. So I'll start by introducing you. So Ati Tipawala Daruka is the Chief Operating Officer at Darwin Travel Tech. It speaks for itself in India. And Ati, later I'll ask you to just say a little bit, in fact, I'll ask each one of you to say a little bit about what you do in your various organizations. And I come to Samora Ndabozuko Mweniso, who is the Manager for Transformation at Tourism KwaZulu-Natal, one of the destination marketing organizations here in South Africa. And our friend Tsepo Matlo, he's the head of marketing and communications at Journey, which is also a technology company here in South Africa. All three of them will say a little bit about what their organizations do. This is a continuation of sessions that we've been doing as CZA Tourism SME Network. My name is Septi Pugula, and I am the director of CZA Tourism SME Network. So I want to start this session by asking you, friends, a question. I've quoted to you what the OECD says about digitalization and SMEs. And I'd like to hear your response, on the sentiments expressed by both Vodafone and OECD that I've quoted, which essentially, just to sum it up for you, say those SMEs that digitalize are going to be able to race ahead, and those that do not digitalize, that's the essence of what they're saying, are going to be left behind. What, I'll start again with you, Ati. Just, in a nutshell, how would you respond to that assertion?
I completely agree with everything that both the studies say. Because in today's world, where increasingly all travelers are becoming comfortable with booking online, anybody who is not visible in the online space cannot sell.
So later, I'll come to you, Samora, right now. And later, when I ask you to tell me specifically, how your organizations are doing in order to facilitate this digital transition or digital transformation I would like to hear more how you are, variously in your organizations enabling that. But let me come to you, Samora. What would your take be on these studies?
Thanks, Mr. Pugula. Hi, colleagues. For me, it really talks to the heart of what we've sort of experienced in terms of the interventions that we've been doing, to assist SMEs. Because I would agree with that, with those sentiments. The channels, have shifted drastically. There's been serious disruption, in the SME sector, and particularly in the tourism sector, where SMEs are expected to play and grow from. So digitization becomes no-brainer, more especially when you driving enterprise development to make sure that there's inclusive growth and inclusive participation in the tourism space, achieve transformation agenda in the country. You ought then, to play in that space and make sure that you bring SMEs to that level where they are digitized and playing in the internet space, So for me, it is a true, a reflection of what is really happening on the ground, and the challenges that are currently faced by SMEs are around the very same issue of digitization, and how to move forward towards recovery. It talks to the same digitization as an option. Thanks, Septi.
Yeah, thanks, Dabozo. I appreciate that response. And Saipo, from your vantage point, what will your take be?
I think, thank you very much, Septi, for the question. I think the biggest thing is we need to reflect also in the past. SMMEs in the past have always been playing a background role when it comes to the travel and tourism space. We have seen the big organizations having platforms, well marketed, investing a lot of money, really spending more and more money into ensuring that they get exposed and they get known. And SMMEs have always been waiting for calls, waiting for someone to notice them when they pass by the street. And this is the high time, and the research is right. This is the high time where we say, what sort of risks can we start avoiding by ensuring that all the SMMEs have some sort of a platform that they can use? Because the travelers these days are online. Travelers, young children. I was actually telling a group at the Department of Tourism recently that young people as young as 6 years old, they are starting to use technology on their phone. So the future that we are seeing is that young people will never drive their car to look for accommodation. They will look online and they will check whether this accommodation is appropriate for them. They will check the styling, they will check the photos, they will check the quality of service being provided on technology before they reach the destination. Therefore, it's imperative that we start pushing for SMMEs to have presence in the available platform that can hook them up to the travel environment that is currently growing.
Right. And in my introduction, I mentioned that all three of you are part of organizations that, well, of course, part of organizations in the travel and tourism sector, but also with a particular focus on SMEs within the sector doing different things. And I'd like to explore now, just briefly, what your organizations are and what it is that they are doing in terms of enabling this digital transformation for SMEs. Now, Arti, you're a tech company yourself, in travel and tech. Tell us a little bit about what your company, Darwin Tech, does. Just a little bit, and then about the company itself, and then later we'll come to what it does specifically in enabling SME digitalization. At this point, I just want our audience to know what your various organizations do in this space.
Sure, Sapti. So, Trip Darwin is a platform that we've created. The company is called Darwin Travel Tech, and we've created a platform which is tripdarwin.com, which is ostensibly one of the most comprehensive holiday planning and single click holiday booking tools available in the world today. We reach out to more than 130 countries across the world and provide options for booking everything from your hotels, transfers, sightseeing, cruises, meals, personal tour guides, everything in all of these destinations. What we've done at Darwin is that we've created a platform that can act as the perfect bridge between those who know how to book travel and those who want to travel. So the tool by itself is highly comprehensive, it's intuitive, and what we're trying to do is use technology to connect those who are sitting in the remote corners of the world with the audience of the world.
So thanks for that, Ati. So you are a perfect example of a company in travel and tourism that is using technology, to drive its competitiveness and advantage, but also making that technology available to others who might be willing to use it to drive their own competitiveness and future growth. So we're going to explore further how others, other than yourselves, might then benefit from your technology in terms of their own digital transformation journey. I remember, someone said to me recently, we were doing a webinar, I'm not going to mention who it was, but made a statement that was really striking to me and said, Africa as a whole remains largely an offline destination. And, largely, I'm not saying entirely, but largely an offline destination. And as a result, it becomes a little difficult in terms of accessing and selling it, because a lot of things still happen offline. So that is why, I'd be quite keen to know how your technology platform would help SMEs in our part of the world to bridge that gap from offline to online. Mr. Matlau, let me come to you. You come from Journey. What is Journey and what is its play in this space that we're talking about?
All right, so Journey is a company that is based in South Africa. Basically, we are implementing a project named National Tourism Visitor Information System, which is a project by the Department of Tourism based here in South Africa. The project looks at three things. One is centralizing travel and tourism data for the country. At this point, colleagues, in our country, we are not able to press one button to see how many accommodation establishments, how many experiences, how many places of interest or heritage are there in our country. So we were created to be able to consolidate, centralize, and make available online that sort of data for our country. And as part of that transformation, we had to identify certain tools that can help us to collect the data. The one was developing a property management system, which is an SMME tool to make sure that those that do not have, and I'll repeat that part, those that do not have a property management system can be provided with that PMS for free. And the reason was so that we can be able to plug them onto the available channels in order for them to become more and more competitive in the travel and tourism space. And lastly, we have developed an information portal so that all the information that we are collecting, we can be able to expose. So for example, we want people to go onto our site to start seeing how many accommodations are available, how many attractions or places of interest are there. Therefore, we're also pushing that people should get onto that site and be able to make a booking. So if you see an SMME somewhere in Durban or somewhere in Newcastle, you should be able to then click and say pay, and then the payment will go to the SMME. The SMME will get a confirmation that they have received a booking from this specific site. So basically, Journey, it's a transformational initiative that seeks to take SMMEs from where they have been for the longest time. We want to move away from using terms like hidden gems to start talking about the jewels of our country that are being exposed and people are making transactions and booking them. We're also looking at making sure that the dancers that we all know, traditional food, we want to make sure that people can do walking tours. We want to make sure that people can feel safe in our country by making sure that we provide the information, the relevant information that is freely available and exposed in the country.
Yeah, thanks, Seppo. We'll go again more in depth into your guys' offerings, and again, with specific focus in terms of what advantage are your offerings giving to SMEs in terms of their own digital journey going forward. Mr. Ngwaneso, from Tourism KwaZulu-Natal, please tell us a little bit what you guys do in relation to our subject for this discussion this morning.
Thanks, Mr. Pukula. Tourism KwaZulu-Natal is a government entity mandated to promote and develop the tourism experience in the province to make sure that we are, Africa's leading tourism destination, as a primary objective. And largely, we play a space towards developing proper marketing strategies that are aimed at ensuring that destination KwaZulu-Natal, is properly marketed and sort of, out there and known by potential visitors to the province. So what has been happening recently was to make sure that we bring in, your tourism trade partners within the province to make sure that they benefit from what we do. We showcase and expose their products, including those of small tourism enterprises within the province. And one of the other key things was to make sure that whatever, media platform that's there, that is available, whatever media buying that we do, we also involve your tourism product owners, tour operators, to make sure that, they've got a platform to actually share what the province has to offer. And the domestic campaign that we are currently driving, it goes with a hashtag that says KZN has all. And to that end, that has been embraced widely by the tourism trade in the province, where you find a situation that there are no more, individual subs strategies that are driving the bigger agenda of the province. There's that cohesion and, a collaboration. And we cannot overemphasize the issue of relationships, more so now we're talking about a disrupted industry, where value chains are no longer flowing, as we used to know. So that is our approach, and digitization has now sort of come to the fore in terms of assisting tourism SMEs to make sure that they pivot their operations, their processes online. So that's what, in a nutshell, we do as the province, as a government entity, to ensure that we assist and help the tourism sector.
Yeah, thanks. And the UN World Tourism Organization, UNWTO, I mentioned a number of organizations in the past, that are really looking at this, and UNWTO is one of those. And for a number of years, as we'll be aware, it's been running these competitions, tourism startup competitions, but they've been actually primarily focused on driving innovation and accelerating innovation in the travel and tourism value chain and ecosystem as a whole. And that program has brought to the fore a large number of these digital platforms driven by startups and SMEs. And I want to, I'm just bridging with that to come back to you, Artie, to say, you are one of the types of platforms that the UNWTO, wants to encourage, recognizing that that's really, to say that's the future of tourism. It's been part of tourism for quite some time, of travel and tourism for quite some time. But as I said earlier, it's probably going to accelerate, because of the advent of COVID-19. There must be some obstacles and some barriers that the SMEs must be facing in terms of digital adoption. So we will talk about those later. So if you could just start applying your minds to those, because I'd really like us to explore that. And you, Art, in your response, have mentioned some of them. So, Mr. Nwaneso, you closed your remarks by saying that digitalization or digital transformation has become, in your efforts to promote the province, to the world, you've come to a realization that digital transformation is becoming an imperative, not just for the big players, but for the SMEs as well. If you could just elaborate then from the point of view of a DMO, destination marketing organization, you interface, SMEs are an important constituency for you because they are suppliers of the product that you want to invite tourists to come to your province to come and enjoy. They are part of the supply chain for that. So what is now, in specific terms, the thinking of your organization in terms of how it might drive digital transformation for SMEs in the province? Where is the focus? How are you approaching that?
Okay, thanks, Mr. Pukula. I must state that, with what we've been doing previously, and fast forward to 2018, where we then realized, certain challenges that are experienced by SMEs in terms of, the channel economics and how to make sure that there's a proper customer experience. We immediately, figured that we do need partnerships with eligible and skilled, platforms and institutions that are already, in the technology space, and actually embracing what we call digital transformation and all its elements. Now, come 2020, with all the plans, on how we're going to assist SMEs going forward, everything was brought to halt due to lockdown regulations, and it meant that there were no interventions that were then, rolled out for the benefit of such SMEs. Now we come back at a stage where, the disruptions that have happened and, the internet has changed altogether, and the private sector has, innovated tenfold in terms of the pace. Now we find ourselves in a situation where we ask, how do we respond? How do we play our part towards tourism recovery in the province and make sure that SMEs are part of that journey as suppliers, as you rightfully put. Now, we then sort of reconfigured our strategy, through our tourism recovery strategy of the province to say, in terms of SMEs in particular, what we would need to do, would need to forge necessary partnerships that will help us achieve our objective towards digitization of SME operations and processes. Now, with that, again, comes the reality that at a government level, that agility, of quickly, putting together these partnerships, quickly, identifying and procuring from such institutions. It's not as easy, because there are government processes, there's laws that have to be obeyed, in terms of procurement processes and whatnot. Now, then it also meant that our response, to the scourge of the COVID impact towards SME business, it's gonna take some time to make sure that we identify proper institutions and organizations whom we can partner with, and actually leverage whatever technologies that they have in place and the partnerships that they already have, so that we can then ensure that SMEs benefit. Of which then, coming to your point, we then recently concluded a partnership, for instance, with the Tourism Grading Council, to say, how do we use your existing platforms, around making sure that these guys, particularly small B&Bs and guest houses, one, they get graded and they give, a good value proposition to the, not so to the customer that has changed drastically in the past year. Their needs are different now. So they need to be reassured of quality assurance and whatnot, and safety issues. Then we forged that partnership, to try and assist great establishments and make sure that they do align to the COVID-19 tourism regulations, around issues of safety and service quality. And then we then, over and above that, secured a partnership with your CESA Tourism SME network, of which you part of it, and also other partners like your Journey and Africa Travel Network, you name them. We Move Technologies, all these come at a time where we are so, desperate and in a sort of, a back foot to try and make sure that we assist SMEs as swiftly and as agile as possible. So now, if you've got such a partnership, what it does, it brings all these other, elements of the digitization process, of which you would want to acquire them separately, of which, as I indicated earlier, as we pivot towards the digital space, it simply means relationships are the key.
Yeah, and before I move off from you, and this may be an unfair question because you represent a provincial government. But as you were answering and talking about all these partnerships that you recognize as being so important in terms of driving, the digitalization journey for SMEs, I was just wondering in my mind, to what extent do you believe that all of government, not just your provincial government, and I think you've said very clearly, articulated very clearly and eloquently what your provincial government is doing. But to what extent do you believe that all of government recognizes the importance of digital first in terms of the future growth prospects of SMEs? And if you believe that all of government recognizes that, and when I say all of government, I'm really talking, from national government to various provincial destination marketing organizations. Do you, sitting where you are, do you believe that this realization now permeates all of government, or are some parts of government still, held up in the past traditional ways of doing things?
To answer this question, it is very broad. What is happening is this, not only government has been caught unawares with the situation, and the agility, and the seamless approach that we all need to employ in order to respond as swiftly as possible. Also the very same business owners, your tourism entrepreneurs, are still holding on to post-COVID. Once COVID and the lockdown issues are past us, will then go back to, the normal, of which I safely say, and I've been saying this since last year, there is no such, because you can think of the ripple effect of, the disruption of the procurement, processes, as Ati was referring to, the disruption of, the tourism value chain, and the disruption that has happened in other sectors and industries has got a direct impact on the hospitality sector, direct impact on the travel and tourism sector. So, which then by implication, it simply means we just need to move on and digitize. There's no other way, or else, as the report was saying, that then you are left behind as an SME. You lose all the opportunities that are brought about by the COVID economy. So from a government point of view, I would safely say we are not moving as quick as we're supposed to, for various reasons, and as I indicate, we are all caught unawares, and you simply need, skills, and certain abilities in order to know the how part. We might know what we want, but the how part becomes the challenge. That is where then research and development comes into play. In order to identify, who are my key stakeholders in order for me to achieve such goals around SME development. And those key stakeholders, what can I give them, and what can I get from them? So those are the questions that we still grappling with, and make in our efforts to make sure that we push the SME agenda towards tourism recovery, not only in KwaZulu-Natal, but in the country. But I must say there are strategies in place. And as I say, the how part, becomes what, we still grappling with to make sure that we respond swiftly and, with agility to these challenges. Thanks,
right.
Septim.
So in a sense, as governments as well catch on, there's no question that enterprises, small and large, have to catch on, and they have to catch on fast. I think, and later also I'm going to explore in terms of how do we actually get the messaging out there to them, because I think it becomes an important part of the tools that we use in order to move the SMEs along the journey to go digital. But we'll explore that later. I want to come to you, Dr. Matlo, over there, because when you spoke earlier, you mentioned, among the things that you mentioned the property management solution or system that you're putting out there to SMEs. I'd like to explore that further. And you also mentioned the booking tool that you're putting out to SMEs. So if I start with your property management system, I'm curious in terms of, again, what competitive advantage that is going to give SMEs, particularly in the accommodation sector. And we'll talk more broadly about the booking tool. And the reason I'm curious about that is that I'm looking in front of me here, again, at this Vodafone Business study. I'd really recommend that you get hold of that study, because I found it incredibly useful. One of the things that it does is that it classifies SMEs in terms of their present digital capabilities and just digital readiness. And I found that quite intriguing to read. So at the top end of the spectrum is what they would call digital dynamos, and I think that speaks for itself. We're going to be going towards wrapping up. So the question that I kind of started touching on briefly when I was responding to Artie's earlier contribution was that, and I think Tsepo also touched on it in a sense, when he was talking about the hospitality segment, these accommodation establishments, that the people who in the main started these businesses, people who are older in age, maybe approaching or having reached retirement, got a package, and went and invested this package in starting up this business. So obviously their technology service is not very strong, but that's a lead in to say maybe that's one of them. But what are you experiencing as obstacles facing SMEs when it comes to embracing digitalization? I mean, so Artie, you are in the business of offering your technology platform to all and sundry around the world. And I'm sure that you deal a lot with SMEs as well, that you are trying to bring onto your platform. I'm sure Mr. Mwani, so in your efforts as transformation manager, tourism KwaZulu-Natal, charged in the main with dealing with SMEs. And of course, Mdade Matlo, you as well, your offerings are really homing in on SMEs. So you all have exposure to SMEs, experience in dealing with SMEs, in trying to move SMEs along on the digitalization journey. What are some of the obstacles or barriers or challenges that you are experiencing in terms of getting SMEs on this journey? Arti, let's start with you.
I think fundamentally we've reached out to over 1,000 travel agents in India alone. Okay, and I think one of the biggest challenges that we realize these people face is actually inertia, right? The desire to change, acceptance of the new. With COVID-19, I think that has changed a lot, that people are realizing they can no longer operate in their old ways. So that is one critical component that has changed with COVID-19. But even then, the acceptance of technology itself is a challenge for a lot of people because, like Mr. Matlu said, a lot of them don't have access to technology. They worked, for so many years, maybe decades in a certain way, and, it's worked for them. So suddenly, there is fear, there is apprehension, and, there is this entire perspective that is technology evil? Is it going to take away something from, what I do so well, something that I do with so much of my own personality, right? So the fear element is definitely one part of it. And the other big challenge to a lot of people seems to be the cost. And that's exactly what we've worked on, because we want to take away the cost, the entry barrier. To create your own platform requires immense investment. But if you can have access to a platform like Trip Darwin, okay, where you just have a registration fee, okay, it takes away that entry barrier. It takes away the fear of having to create something on your own without the right knowledge. So I think between the cost of entry onto a technology platform or creating a technology platform of your own and the fear of how to do it, a lot of people are not able to make the necessary changes to embrace the new world of travel and tourism.
Yeah.
And if we can help that, because when we started Darwin, we realized that, when we were doing bookings for Africa, we've been in the travel industry for 15 years. And when we've sent so many people to, destinations like Africa or even New Zealand or, remote corners of the world, we realize that sometimes there's a double booking. There is, sometimes improper communication. Technology can be a barrier in some places that, your driver doesn't have a cell phone or the traveler is not carrying a cell phone, things like that. Uh, we realize that, what either Mr. Queniso is doing or what Mr. Matlow is doing, things like that, combined with our technology, can really remove those roadblocks. Because each one of us, in our own way, is trying to empower someone who has fear, inability, and lack of resources. Each one of us is doing that in our own way. And if we reduce the cost barrier, I think that itself is, a huge victory.
Okay. So fear or apprehension, cost of upfront investment, access, and these kinds of things as some of the barriers. And Mr. Mwani, so when you responded earlier, you mentioned that SMEs still talk of going back to the old ways of doing things. So to some of your SME clients, this thing will pass and we will go back to doing business as usual. And you are saying to them, no, that is not how it's going to happen. So why do you feel, is it because they don't know any better that you feel that they still, talking about going back to doing things as usual? Or what are your other experiences in terms of some of the barriers of getting SMEs to come along on this journey?
Thanks, David. For me, I think what becomes a serious issue. There's two for me, which is the first one, the awareness, the issue of awareness, amongst the SMEs sector, SME sector, you find an issue where they do not do certain things only because they are not aware of what is out there. Take, for instance, the issue around access to these IT solutions. When you talk those IT solutions, the first thinking is around, your high-tech IT solutions, not looking at what does the SME, IT sector, what has achieved between late 2019 or early 2020 to today. They've done a lot. There's ones that have been in existence, but they've jettisoned to high levels now to be very competitive, with the big high tech guys because of the high demand, in the economy in general. So now, if they were to be aware of such, and then number two, the issue of cost, which talks to access, is one of the. There are also misconceptions around that, to think or believe that it is expensive. As Archie was putting it correctly, as an SME, for me, it's more cost effective to join an existing platform that is well marketed, that already has, some form of economies of scale, that will help your business grow. So those are the questions that needs to be answered. So those are the things. And another thing for me, this is now looking at the providers themselves of such IT solutions. What is the best way that we can do in order to help the smaller guys in the sector? If we look at issues of commissions, subscriptions, what are other options, or approaches that we can utilize in order to generate value from what they offer SME businesses, while SMEs benefit themselves, taking into consideration the issue of, the fact that they don't have much resources, to go by towards the digitization process, and as part of this digitization process, another barrier is the issue of culture, and this culture it doesn't only affect, the tourism sector, even other sectors that play a role, or have an impact, with what the tourism sector is doing, from a procurement point of view. Now, with that, how do you then change what you knew for decades or for years? It has worked for you. How do you shift, without getting, sort of uncomfortable with this shift? Whether will I still have control, of my operations? So those are the things that it boils down to, the issue of awareness and workshopping, SMEs to understand and know that, these platforms are actually more cost-effective ways in terms of that digitization process. And they're even cheaper, and the belief that in order for me to pivot my business in a digital space, to recalibrate my business model, I need to have a website. That's not true. Website can come later. All you need is to be part of better platforms, have better content that clearly articulates and present what your business has to offer. So for me, those are the questions that, from a tourism enterprise development point of view, we continue, to learn and reskilling, ourselves now as practitioners to make sure that we give accurate and proper information, to the guys. And you would understand that, unfortunately, in the South African context, you have people who are largely rural, in terms of their operations, and the level of education, particularly on the subject itself, of the digital transformation, so there are such barriers that we need to address and sort of break into small chunks whatever information and the process that they need to, take towards a recovery. And maybe lastly, one of the key things was the issue of, these platforms and the content that is being generated and utilized, it being, mobile friendly, that's another issue. Because I may be in KwaXolo, for argument's sake, in a rural village, but if I've got my smartphone, I do have connectivity. It shouldn't stop me from running a proper and a growing homestay or accommodation. So those are the questions that we need to answer. How do we make it easy for them? Because innovation is about reducing time and space, more so now that the customer has changed altogether in the past year in terms of what they need with the new on-demand economy, and you need to respond swiftly. I want it to consume it the way I want it, So those are the questions that we're trying to answer. Thank you.
I was listening to Samora when he was talking about what people want first, and sometimes what people actually would like. It's like saying to someone, now you have a business, what do you think comes first? And somebody says website, or somebody says, I need a big building to be able to produce this thing. Without the big building, I won't be able to do it. So people start to come up with excuses. We are making technology to become accessible. We're making technology to become free. We're making technology to become something that does not cost a lot of money. We are making technology, as Jenny, to be available to SMEs across the country. We are calling on all the DMOs to talk to us. We are calling on all the local municipalities to talk to us. We are calling on the national government and all other structures that deal with SMEs, especially in the travel, tourism, and hospitality space, to talk to us, because the transformational initiative that we are building in terms of the technology is for the country. It's not for Jenny to become a profitable company, but it's for the Department of Tourism to be able to say, in terms of our capacity building, we have capacitated our people by giving them technology. So my closing is, I invite everyone who's listening to get in touch with Jenny by visiting our website, jenny.ceo.za, and just to read, to also connect with us. We're going to be running series of other webinars. We'll be talking to SMEs directly. We're partnering with DMOs so that we can go as far as small SMEs who do not have technology. Ati was talking earlier about the fact that their system, somebody can go online and capture details. In our research, we found that there are certain SMEs, not all of them, but there are certain SMEs who do not even have a smartphone, who do not have technology. So from April, we'll be going out there, we'll be going to villages with our teams, we'll be walking on the street, we'll be doing door-to-door campaign to make sure that we can talk to them at first hand, physically, face-to-face. And thank you, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ndadamaklo, and thank you for joining this conversation. Ati?
Firstly, thank you so much, Septi, for having me and Darwin on this platform. We've been working with CISA for a while now, I think, to figure out, how we can do two things. One is enable the SMEs in Africa to reach out to a wider audience while improving their margins and reducing their costs. Okay. We believe that enablement will lead to empowerment, because that is exactly what we're trying to do at Trip Darwin, trying to create a simplified platform where you can just write to us and tell us you want to be listed with us, and we will give you, an access, a login to just plug and play. And we're trying to keep the cost barrier as minimal as possible. And I understand we're working with, Septi here and CISA to do that in a way that the hardest hit of them can come out of this and thrive, prosper, to not just undo, whatever damage they've sustained because of COVID-19, but to do so beautifully well in the new world that we're going to be seeing, whenever things tide over. And I think that is what we need. We need cooperation. We need belief in each other's abilities, that with the help of technology and human relation, we can create a landscape where the SMEs can do as well as the big boys, that we can all get a piece of the pie.
Yeah. Thank you, Artie. And Mr. Mwani, so you have the final word on this.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Pupula. No, thanks for actually inviting us to be part of this webinar, to share, our journey towards tourism recovery, particularly facing, on helping SMEs, recover and, become viable again. For me, the parting shot would be, the encouragement of partnerships, not only from a government and private sector point of view, but also SMEs themselves, taking the opportunity, that is brought about by COVID-19, where now, they've got a room to play through digitization, in the bigger space where they wouldn't have played, in the past, to take that opportunity, forge partnerships, create business linkages, be part of those networks, and make sure that there's a synergy in what one does to create, an overall experience for a customer, because this is not about individual offering. It's about a total picture of what, experience is seen to be by that particular potential consumer. So partnerships all the way for us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. So, I mean, we're saying assertively that digitalization is a growth imperative for tourism SMEs. I think, we're making that message very clear. We'll recognize that it's a journey, for, different SMEs at different places of that journey, but it's a journey that we all need to go on, especially, encourage SMEs to go on that journey, because again, just going back to the studies that I opened with at the start of this conversation, if that transition doesn't happen, a large number of SMEs will unfortunately be left behind.